Hi, I'm Jonathan Wolf.
And I'm Leslie Wolf.
Welcome to Worship with the First Church in Belmont, Unitarian Universalist. Please join us in saying, Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift.
Good morning. My name is Parish Dobson, and I'm a member of the worship committee at First Church, and I'm here to offer you some opening words for our service this morning, this Mother's Day. I want to tell you a story. One time, when I was a new mother, I and my husband and our 2-year-old went to visit my parents who lived in Connecticut. After dinner, one of the evenings, my mother and I were washing up. I was doing the dishes, and in the middle of our easy chat about this and that, there was a pause. And she looked at me lovingly, and she asked, "What's it like to have a mother?" Well, that's a deep question. The kind of question that makes you turn the water off and stop everything and try to begin to find an answer. You see, my mother didn't really have a mother. Why? Because in the late 1920s and 30s, from the time my mother was 6 years old until the time she was 12, her mother was profoundly ill with tuberculosis and was mostly not at home. This was a heartbreaking situation for everyone. When her mother died, after years in various sanatoriums, my mother, aged 12, began her long journey through her life without a mother. She had people who stepped in, a beloved aunt, some devoted friends. Her father, a businessman, did the best he could by putting her in boarding school, sending her to college, and visiting when he could. By the time my mother graduated from college in the 40s, early 40s, she had been carefully taught the cultural expectations of that time, I should say for her class. Forgive me for that phrase. But that the expectations were that if a woman was to get on in this life, she needed to find a man and have children. And so she did the best she could in that. Her love for me and my 2 older brothers was deep, and I am grateful for that. But what I learned later in my life is what she had never experienced, the ongoing love of mother, made it most difficult for her to mother me and my brothers into our adulthoods. Plus, society was changing so much. I came out of college in the 70s, ready to figure out who I was, questioning norms, wondering how I would make a living, wondering how I could become who I wanted to be. These were struggles my mother couldn't help me with and really didn't understand. Back to the question. What's it like to have a mother? I think all of us either have to or have had to answer that question uniquely. Much of your answer to that question about your own mothers, I imagine, has depended on the mothering your mother had, or the mothering your grandmother had. Some of us will have mothers you may describe as kind or brave-hearted or funny, smart. The mother who was always there, the mother who knew you so well, or the mother whom you love every day and miss every day. But some of us may also have mothers who themselves had difficulties. Their mothering of you was strong but had gaps that we as adults have had to come to terms with. Perhaps we've found other ways to mother ourselves, or have found a kind of mothering in friendships or in a partner. We are all born with the fierce love that birthing demands. Most of us are nurtured and brought up the best our mothers could do. And we have found, if lucky, and with our own inner resilience, our ways of walking lovingly with those we have in our lives, and lovingly on this earth, the mother really of all of us.
Mom seems sad, and I don't know why. Could it be that she found out about the time that I lied, and I didn't actually finish all 6 of my chores? Or that I kicked Grandpa that time when he snored? Or that I still prefer the haircut that she had before? Well, Mom still gave me lunch, so it mustn't be that bad. Did she find out about the time that I burned Rachel's dad? I promise it's not as bad as it sounds. I told him to catch a sparkler, then he howled like 30 greyhounds and was heard all through the neighboring towns. Mom still seems sad. If only I knew what to say. Maybe I'll pick her some flowers. It is early May. I remember last year when I picked them for Oh, shoot. Is it Mother's Day? Well, that woman needs a massage. She needs diamonds and gold. She puts up with me. I'm a free-spirited soul. Let's get her balloons. Let's get her a dove. She needs to know now of my undying love. How could I forget? Now what will I do? I guess it's best to tell her the one thing that I know is true. Mom, you're the best. And I love you too.
Sleep, my child, and peace attend you all through the night. I who love you shall be near you all through the night. Soft but drowsy as a creeping hill and vale in slumber sleeping, I my love in vigil keeping all through the night. Mother, I can feel you near me all through the night. Father, I know you can hear me all through the night. And when I am your age nearly, still I will remember clearly how you sang and held me dearly all through the night. While the moon her watch is keeping all through the night, while one half the world is sleeping all through the night. Even while the sun comes stealing, visions of the day revealing, breeze of pure and holy feeling all through the night.
Touched by an angel. We, unaccustomed to courage, exile from delight, live coiled in shells of loneliness until love leaves its high holy temple and comes into our sight to liberate us into life. Love arrives, and in its train come ecstasies, old memories of pleasure, ancient histories of pain. Yet, if we are bold, love strikes away the chains of fear from our souls. We are weaned from our timidity. In the flush of love's light, we dare be brave. And suddenly, we see that love costs all we are and will ever be. Yet, it is only love which sets us free.
I am here today to celebrate the liberating power of love. And one of the most powerful and fierce and tender and calculating and selfless and encompassing and pervasive and endless kinds of love I have ever known is mother love. Now, especially, seeing my beloved wife's mother love up close, I am in awe. Just this last weekend, Lauren unearthed bins and bins of clothing, which she has been amassing for years, always finding deals and bargains, things she knows each of our kids will enjoy a little while down the line. And with 3 kids, this is a feat of mental acuity. And I realized as she unearthed these treasures, these little gifts she gave to her future self and our future children, that one of the most beautiful things about her love for all of us is that it's always going on. She's always thinking about all of us. Now, don't get me wrong, she's doing lots of other things as well, her work, her own selfhood. She has lots going on, but also perpetually, she's thinking about us all, who we are now, thinking about who we are growing into, scheming and strategizing always about how she can help us blossom and grow. Her mother love is fertilizer and compost, helping ensure that the setting and context is right for all of our thriving. Her constant vigilance in the face of strain and pressure has been a revelation to me. Witnessing the power of her love to keep us all on track, even in the midst of the storms, especially in the midst of this storm. Staying relentlessly true to the people she knows deep down we can all become has been a powerful thing to witness and to experience. Her love sets us free over and over. Like the poet said, love comes into our sight to liberate us into life. We dare be brave, and suddenly we see that love costs all that we are and will ever be, but yet only love will set us free. Now, of course, part of what is complicated about Mother's Day is many of us have complex relationships with our mothers. My own mother was in part so effusive in her own loving because her mother rarely showed love in ways that she could understand. My grandmother was an opera singer, plucked from a promising career and plopped into the 1950s in a cow town in rural Ohio, soon caring for 4 children. She was trapped. She was bitter. And so my mother grew up hungry for sweetness, hungry for love, which she found once a year on visits to her grandmother. Her grandmother who would scoop her up into her arms and hold her. I imagined the little child version of my mother, starved for love, parched for love, coming into that embrace and soaking it up. Drinking it in like a dried sponge in fresh water, knowing that this was how she would live, knowing that this is how she would parent and person. So we give thanks today, especially for all of our mothers, skillful and less skillful. We give thanks for all those who have shaped us, for all of our raw materials, for the gift of memory and the power of choice. I love this poem by May Sarton, For My Mother. Once more I summon you. Out of the past with poignant love, you who nourished the poet and the lover, I see your gray eyes looking out to sea in those Rockport summers, keeping a distance within the closeness, which was never intrusive, opening out into the world. And what I remember is how we laughed till we cried, swept into merriment, especially when times were hard. And what I remember is how you never stopped creating, how people sent me dresses which you had designed with rich embroidery in brilliant colors because they could not bear to give them away or cast them aside. I summon you now not to think of the ceaseless battle with pain and ill health, the frailty and the anguish. No, Today, I remember the Creator, the lion-hearted. I remember my grandmother, the opera singer, but especially I remember her friendship. In her rural exile, she had a best friend, and he meant the world to her. He was paraplegic, living as a disabled person in a place and in an era with no services or support. He had a loving family, and he had my grandmother. And they had each other, and they would read. They read the entire great book series, classics of literature, and they would discuss. They were very intelligent, and they fed on one another, just like my mother being held and saved by the soul food of her grandmother's hugs. My grandmother had her friend, and they had their books, and she was saved by that love. The poet said, "We, unaccustomed to courage, exiles from delight, live in coiled shells of loneliness until love comes to liberate us into life." This path, these relationships, this strange and difficult moment we are all sharing, all this is here to set us free. Tina Cherry was liberated into life by her fierce mother love. Her son Louis Brown was killed, caught in the crossfire of gang violence which he had worked in his 15 years to help end and help heal. There's no worse kind of pain than the death of your child. I have seen it up close, especially in such a violent way. It would be easy to shrivel. It would be easy to retreat and to hold up and to crumble. But Tina did not crumble. She did not shrivel. Instead, somehow in the midst of her pain and grief, that same mother love, that same lion-hearted love set her free, and along with others, she created the Louis T. Brown Institute, which in their words is a center of healing, teaching, and learning for families and communities impacted by murder, trauma, grief, and loss, which works to create and sustain an environment where all families can live in peace and all people are valued. Every Mother's Day, there is a walk for peace. This year, the event is virtual. By the time you see this worship, it might be in the past, but we will be sharing all of today's offering with the Institute. So please do follow the instructions at the end of the video to our online donation portal. It's pretty simple. You just go to uubelmont.org/giving, and you can either open up a web page there, or also you can give by text. Very fancy. Just choose any of the worship gift options, and everything we receive will be shared evenly with the Institute and the church to help support their wonderful work in the world. Especially now, in this frightened and unsure moment. Especially now, I can feel love setting me free. There is so much fear. There is so much suffering. And then there are these moments, these unspeakably beautiful moments of love. So simple. My littlest child snuggled up in my lap, or one of my bigger children snuggled up next to me, allowing their impossibly large man-child bodies to be held close, even if for just a moment. And immediately I flash back to those early days, their fresh, tiny baby bodies, fitting almost in my hand, resting right here on my chest, their whole selves held. Our love for one another in this community can hold us like this. With all the noise, with all the unknown, with all the hard parts of these days, still, our commitment to one another, our shared vision, our common purpose, this powerful, radiant love at the core and center of what we do, this holds us and this sets us free. Like the poet said, sets us free of everything that would hamper our rise. Love holds us, small babies resting on sturdy chests, curled up. Our task, especially now, is to open to this love, to remember this love, to allow it to hold us, to allow ourselves to be loved like this, to be set free from the cycles of worry and fear, if for a moment, from the cycles of pain and grief, if for a moment, and to rest again in this powerful love, holding us now, holding us always. Amen.